Welcome to the Joy Hour Show. Today, I have the privilege of talking with Ian Bowen. Now, Ian Bowen had a life-changing experience in 2009. He was diagnosed with neurosarcoidosis, leading to a spinal cord surgery that left him paralyzed from the chest down at just 32 years old. Despite being told he would never run again, Ian defied the odds through sheer willpower and what he calls positive persistence. His grueling rehabilitation journey culminated in the creation of the RINSE methodology. Remember, imagine, notice, shift, and expect, which he now uses to empower others to overcome their setbacks and their challenges. In 2022, Ian achieved his seemingly impossible approach to running a full marathon. Today, he is a motivational speaker, a success coach, a fitness entrepreneur. He's dedicated to helping others crush limiting beliefs and unlock their potential. Ian's story is a testament to thriving against the odds. He continues to inspire his wife and 6 children and many others to find their inner strength and step into the next best version of themselves through positive persistence. Ian, welcome to Joy Hour.
Tom, thank you so much. It is an honor to be here, and I appreciate you having me on the show.
Absolutely. Now help me out on the word. I've shared with you, we're friends, so I'm very authentic. I'm very open. I do struggle with some words, but give me what that word means and how it's pronounced.
Sure. So it is pronounced neurosarcoidosis. Yeah. So neurosarcoidosis is at least at the time in 2009 when I was diagnosed, is a very rare form of sarcoid. Sarcoidosis is most commonly diagnosed as pulmonary, found in the chest and in the lungs. But at that point in time in 2009, 2% of sarcoid cases were diagnosed as neurosarcoidosis. So sarcoid was a rare disease to begin with, but neurosarcoidosis was a rare version of the rare disease. So I guess if you're going to go big, why not? Right?
So bring me to that.
Go home, is what they say,
Yeah,
right?
no kidding. Bring me to that point though. So you're going through your 20s, your 30s, you're in shape, you're athletic, life's going
Yeah,
normal, and then it hits you. How did that?
exactly. Exactly. So I've been an athlete all my life. Soccer was my sport of choice. I played it all the way up into college. And after college, I stayed in shape by lifting weights. And about maybe about a year before, so we're talking about 2008, I started to run recreationally, meaning like run 5Ks and things like that and run races. And I loved it because it was a new way for me to compete, right? And it was the best type of competition is you're competing with yourself. And so I had picked it up thanks to my sister-in-law at the time, because she was a runner and she kind of turned me on to it. And so I was in great shape, 32 years old. I was working out, 4 or 5 days a week at the gym. I was running 2 or 3 days a week. So cardiovascularly was in shape. I was really in probably some of the best shape of my life at that time anyway. And then yeah, out of nowhere, life decided to hit me with the right hook and knock me out. So long story short, and I won't get into all the details because it is a long story, but I started to have some tingling sensations in my right leg that then spread to my left leg, that then traveled up to my chest. And I went to the doctor because this was very abnormal, obviously. And to give you a description, it's like, you know how when your hands or feet fall asleep, like you've
Mm-hmm.
been laying on something, you get that tingly pin, kind of like a pin sensation.
Right.
That's what I felt. And I had no idea what was causing it or where it was coming from. But then I also started to have some pain like right underneath my pecs, like right underneath my chest. And I had chalked it up to, I was lifting weights up. Maybe I pulled a muscle, so I didn't worry too much about it. A couple weeks passed. That tingling sensation didn't go away. That pain in my chest didn't go away. Went to the doctor. But first, I do what most guys do and say, I'll be all right.
Right.
I don't need to get checked out, right? Well, after it didn't go away for a couple of days and it started to get worse, I need to go get it checked out. So got it checked out, got an MRI. and it showed that there was something on my spinal cord. And my doctor said that we need to do another type of MRI, which is called the MRI with contrast, when they actually shoot you with dye, and it kind of lights you up so you can kind of see things a little bit better. Well, when they did that, they could definitely see that there was something growing on my spinal cord.
Hmm.
At that point in time, my doctor, I live in Northwest Indiana, my doctor said, look, we're not messing with anybody around here. We need to send you to a specialist right away. Now, my doctor has been my family doctor, known me for years, and I've always been a very healthy individual. So when she saw that, she was like, this is really abnormal. We need to take immediate action. So I'm going to send you to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. Now, I don't know if we've heard of the Mayo Clinic, but that is like where the experts of experts are in the medical field. Send me up to the Mayo Clinic. They do a battery of their tests. Sure enough, they do also find that there's something growing on my spinal cord. And they're trying to figure out what it is, but all of their tests come back inconclusive. And they did everything from spinal taps to your regular blood, urine samples. They took a biopsy from the inside of my eyelid. I mean, they were doing anything and everything to try to figure this thing out. And what they came to was they had two options. They sat me down and they said, Ian, we either think this is cancer, so it could be a tumor, or it could be a rare disease called neurosarcoidosis. We need to do surgery, which is our last resort. We need to go in and take a biopsy of this thing and figure out what it is. The tricky part is that it's not actually growing on your spinal cord, it's growing in your spinal cord. So from the inside out, this thing is actually intertwined with the spinal cord tissue and it's growing rapidly. From the first MRI that I had at home compared to the MRI I had at the Mayo Clinic 2 weeks later, they could see that it was actually growing in size quickly. So, being 32 years old and a little naive, I was like, well, let's figure what this thing is. Let's go ahead and do the surgery. Because in my head, I'm thinking you're going to go in, you're going to do the surgery, you're going to figure out what it is, you're going to give me some treatment, and you're going to fix me, and I'll be good. Because this was June of 2009, and I was training for a 5K in August, so I needed to get better quick,
Yeah.
right?
Get back.
So I signed the papers. Let's do the surgery. Let's go. All gung ho. So before I did that, though, they made it very clear to me. They said, Ian, this is a very risky surgery. There is no extra space, if you will. There is no square footage or inches. I'm trying to go with the construction lingo because I know you're a construction guy.
Right.
There is no any spare space on the spinal cord that isn't used.
Mm-hmm.
So as we go in to do this surgery, you could be paralyzed for the rest of your life. We just need to make sure that you understand that this is a very risky surgery. However, we need to figure out what this thing is so we can set a course of treatment for you. Because then they were saying like if we don't do this and we treat you for cancer and it's not cancer and we're 6 weeks down the road and nothing has taken effect, now we're 6 weeks behind the eight ball in treating neurosarcoidosis. If it's the other way around, we're 6 weeks behind on treating you for cancer. So we got to figure out what this thing is right now. Do the surgery. Okay. I wake up in my recovery room and it's good news from the nurse. She tells me it's not cancer. It is neurosarcoidosis like we thought it was, which is not curable. It is treatable. However, the worst case scenario had happened. From the chest down, I was gone. No feeling, no sensation, no movement, no nothing. I was paralyzed from the chest down.
And from the time you first felt the tingly sensation until that moment was about how long?
That was probably about 2 months.
So
So everything
you're
happened
great, and then within
very
2 months,
quickly.
you're sitting there hearing this news in the hospital.
Yes.
Wow. What went through your mind in that first few minutes?
I think at first, Tom, it was disbelief because in my head, I felt, well, this is probably just the anesthesia. It's gonna wear off and I'll get my movement back or my sensation back. Well, a couple days go by and everything's the same. Nothing's returning. That's when my care team came in. I've gone now from my recovery room to my regular hospital room. And my care team being my neurologist, my neurosurgeon, and a couple of other doctors that assisted with the surgery came in to check and see how I was doing, right? So they come in with a nurse, and the nurse is starting to do her typical neurological tests. And she has a pin, like a push pin in her hand, and she's poking my toes, poking my feet, poking my shins, poking my thighs, poking all the way up to my belly. And every time she's poking me, she's like, "Can you feel that? Can you feel that? Can you feel that?" And every time I'm like, "No, no, no, I can't feel any of that." And I think that's when it started to set in like, this isn't going to wear off. Because as she's doing that, I'm realizing my care team is here for a reason, right? They're here, yes, to check on me, but now we start talking about my prognosis. And my neurological team, my neurosurgeon and my neurologist are talking to me and they're telling me that, okay, Ian, we think you're going to be able to walk again, but you're most likely going to need a walker, a cane, or crutches. And even though I heard him say that to me, again, I think I was still in disbelief because I'm thinking, I got this race. What? I got this race in August. I said, well, am I ever going to be able to run again? And that's when they said no. And for me at that point in time, because of my history, which we talked a little bit about before we started with my father, who I did not get along with, and I kind of joke that it's because of him that I have a aversion to authority because he was always on my back, always on my case. When I heard that, just in my mind I was like, that's no, that's not right, doctor. That's your prognosis is not for me.
Mm-hmm.
In that moment, I decided not to let that doctor's perception of my abilities become my reality.
Come on. Yeah.
And if there is any message that your listeners can take from this conversation, it is that
Mm-hmm.
to never let someone else's perception of your capabilities become your reality.
That's
Because
so
we
true.
let that happen so often in our
Mm-hmm.
lives,
Mm-hmm.
where we allow someone else to put us in a box, where we let someone else pigeonhole us. And then what we do is we shut down our own potential because of someone else's ideas about us.
Mm-hmm.
And for me in that moment, I don't know why, I don't know what, but for some reason, I did not take that doctor's words for gospel, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, you may think that, doctor, but that's not the future that I have for me.
Yeah.
So my identity, I believe, as a fit person, as a physical person, um, wouldn't allow me to accept that as a outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And from that point on, it was, let's start physical therapy. Let's go. You think I'm not going to be able to run again? Watch me. And that's when it all started.
It's amazing. And I know that's just a glimpse of those moments of your life, but I'm reminded how important that is to, be careful what voices are speaking into all of our lives and how much we accept those because somebody, maybe a very educated doctor, maybe a family member, maybe a mentor even speaks into our life and says something. A lot of times all of us have had times where we've accepted that as if it's a fact or truth.
Mhm.
And I can't imagine personally what that would be like uh, to make the choices on a daily basis to say they're wrong and I'm going to prove it and I'm going to put in the work. And then you did, and you've got to the point now. Every time I've seen you in person, you're you're jumping around, you're moving, you're
Yeah.
energetic, and you've ran marathons. and you continue to put in the work.
Right.
I know we don't have a ton of time to go through every step of that, but
Hmm.
if somebody right now is listening, which they are, and they're
Right.
going through a diagnosis, either physically, maybe financially, maybe spiritually, where voices are telling them, what one or two steps would you say as far as encouraging them not to accept it? You've touched on that a little bit, but
Yeah.
to put in the work and be persistent
Hmm.
through those voices that are sometimes so loud. You're not going to be able to. And so many kids, they are born with that. You're not good enough. You're not smart enough. You're not skilled enough. You're not talented enough. What words of
Right.
advice could you give to the audience?
I think in order for you to be able to, achieve something that is unthinkable,
Mm-hmm.
right? You have to be working from a place of positivity. And what I mean by that is you have to be able to clear out any self-doubt. You have
Mm-hmm.
to clear out the negativity. Now, that's really difficult to do 100% of the time because that's just reality. It's going to happen. But in the majority of the time, you have to be confident in your own abilities. And for the longest time, I was so upset with that doctor, thinking to myself, why would he tell me that?
Mm-hmm.
Why would he diminish my possibilities? Why would he dash my hopes like that?
Mm-hmm.
And it came to me that he is just working off of his knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
He's working off of his experiences of other patients who he did a similar surgery to and what their outcomes were.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like it was a personal attack on me. However, that's how I took it.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't a personal attack. He was just dealing, or he was using his education, his knowledge, his experience to give me what he thought the outcome was going to be for me. So why I add that in here, why I say that is because it's really important for us to understand when we have any type of self-limiting doubts
Mm-hmm.
or negative self-talk, where is it coming from? Where does it stem from?
Mm-hmm.
Because nobody is walking around putting themselves down on purpose.
Yeah.
We don't get joy from doing that. That's coming from somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that is coming from a situation that we had early on in life, whether that be coming from a toxic situation we're in now, could be work, could be relationship. It's coming from somewhere. So the first thing we need to do is figure out where those negative thoughts are coming from. And
Mm-hmm.
when we can start to figure out where they're coming from, now we can start to also track, when am I having them?
Mm-hmm.
When are those negative thoughts starting to sprout up in my day to day? Why are they happening?
Mm-hmm.
And then once we can finally acknowledge when they're happening, where they're coming from, we can start to weed them out.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other side of that, we need to start remembering, which is the first step in my rinse methodology, remembering all of the successes that we have had in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So for those of us who are stuck, those of us who are facing adversity, those of us who are feeling like, I don't know how I'm going to be able to get over this hurdle, think back to other times in your life when you did just that. It may be a different season, it may be a different environment, it may be a different time in your life, but you have done amazing things before. You have overcome things before. And when you can remember that, start thinking about the steps that you took personally to get over that situation. And
Mm-hmm.
that is going to give you the foresight in what you need to do now to get over whatever is in front of you currently. And on top of that, if you can think back to how you felt when you overcame, if you can
Mm-hmm.
think back to how you felt when you won, when you were able to overcome that adversity in the past, and you can connect your actions with that emotion, and now you're truly remembering that moment, you
Mm-hmm.
can start to live that way. You can start to put that emotion and that feeling in whatever you are doing right now. So that would be step number one. That is key. Eliminating the negative self-talk, figuring out where it's coming from, and
Mm-hmm.
start to remember how powerful you truly are. Because you have had times in your life where you have been the victor, not the victim.
Mm-hmm. I'm just sitting here listening, thinking this podcast I completely thought was for the audience. I'm gonna let you keep going because I think it's for me today, and I'll offline I'll share more with you when we connect. But keep
Man,
going, and man, it's very timely. You're just sitting there speaking in my life. I'm trying not to shed a tear or get emotional here, but I might. Who knows? But yeah, remembering things we've been through, brother. There are
yeah.
storms in life, and they're all different sizes. Maybe they all come at different times. I'm not saying the one I'm going through now is huge, but it's a bit of a doozy. And so remember other challenges that we've been through, and take that to current situations, and remember, like, you can, and you will, and that's awesome. So that is okay. Keep going. So what's the I?
So the eye is all about imagining,
Okay.
right? Or what I like to call is really about visualizing. But again, it's visualizing with emotion. And what I mean by that is when I was in my hospital bed, which I was in a hospital for about 4 weeks before I was released in my wheelchair, I had plenty of time on my hands.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And for me, I made myself a promise that I was going to uncover every rock, every stone, do everything in my power to regain the ability to walk and run and return to 100% recovery.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, well, what can I do while I'm in my hospital bed, paralyzed? And that was just use my imagination.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to imagine what it was going to be like to feel the floor again, what it was going to be like to walk again, what it was going to be like to be able to hold my, at that time, 1 year old son in my arms
Mm-hmm.
and not be in a wheelchair and walk around and be able to get on the ground with him and play with him and be there for my daughter and my son's birthday and be the dad that I wanted to be, that I had in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
But imagining those things was the first step because I imagined them and I visualized them so clearly. It was almost like once those things happened, it wasn't a surprise.
Mm-hmm.
It was like I visualized this, I created this. It was just waiting for me physically to catch up, but it was mentally already there.
Mm-hmm.
I had created this reality that I just needed to step into, no pun intended.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But when we're able to visualize the end in mind before we begin, then we can start to have something that we're going to be working towards.
Mm-hmm.
When you have that visualization, and then again, you connect that emotion with how are you going to feel when you have had that success? Or
Mm-hmm.
how are you going to feel when you are working your way towards that success? And being able to emote that on a daily basis helps you really laser focus on what you're doing to make sure you get to that goal.
Right.
But that visualization, that imagination is a huge piece. So if you can imagine already winning,
Mm-hmm.
what that feels like and what that person is going to be doing on a day-to-day basis, and you start to now use that as a framework to work in terms of your daily actions to take to get to that goal,
Mm-hmm.
you are ahead of the game. And while you're on that journey, while you're on that path, make sure that you are taking time to celebrate your small wins. And that's where the notice comes into play. And for me, that's super important because as I was on my journey making progress,
Mm-hmm.
after I got out of the hospital, got home, luckily for me, I hooked up with an amazing physical therapist who challenged me on a daily basis. Day one, I roll in with my wheelchair. She does a couple of tests. She says, "Come back tomorrow, but don't you dare come back in that wheelchair. You use that walker." Okay. And from there, I was like, I found my person. This is exactly who I needed. So we had a great relationship because her name was Dolly Fatke, amazing physical therapist. I spent 5 days a week with her for months. And there were days I would walk in with my walker or my cane and my crutches, all things that I use in my progression of recovery, where I was defeated, Tom. Like I wasn't positive that day. And my persistence was being tested because there were those days where I was like, this sucks.
Mm-hmm.
This sucks. I don't want to do this today. I don't want to come in and do this physical therapy to remind me how incapable I am right now.
Mm-hmm.
But she would see that and she would let me sit in it for a minute. And then she would look me dead in the face and she would say, are you done with your pretty party now? Can we get to work now?
Yeah.
And she would snap me back into shape. But what she would tell me is that she would say, you have to realize how far you have come. Let's take a minute to look back at where you were 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago, in a hospital bed, paralyzed from the chest down, with the prognosis of you're never going to walk again unassisted. Here you are now going from a wheelchair to a walker to two canes to one cane to eventually nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Look at all the progress you've made already. And by forcing me to look back on what I had achieved in the past, that really helped me gain momentum and realize what I'm able to do in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that was a huge game changer to notice all the small wins that I've had up to that point. Because as we know, as we stack those small wins, one on
Mm-hmm.
top of the other, they turn into big ones.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that's why notice is so important. And then there's the S, there's the shift in the rinse methodology. And that is all about shifting your mindset to focus on the things that you can do, not the things that you can't do. And that mindset is so important because again, who wants to be beating themselves down with negative thoughts about what I can't achieve? Focus on the things that you can do. Focus on your strengths and the things that you have a hard time with, you work on those.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're using words like try, can't, don't, and won't, if those are the beginning words of a sentence, is that going to be a positive sentence that we're using? No. And that's
Mm-hmm.
something that I've been telling my clients for years is that those words are not allowed when we're training together,
Mm-hmm.
when we're working together, because those are all powerless words that lead to negativity. It is all about I can, I
Mm-hmm.
will, I must. And when you're feeding yourself that, that's what you're going to listen to because the distance from here to here is not very far,
Mm-hmm.
right? And when you have that mindset of I can, I will, I must, now you can also expect to win, which is the E in rinse, expectation. But the E is two-sided, Tom. Here's what I found is that on your journey to whatever you are trying to achieve, you better expect it to be difficult. It is not going to be easy. No one's going to hand you the thing that you want most in life and say, here you go. You are going to have to work. You are going to have to grind. You are going to have to suffer in order for you to achieve it. But while you're going through that, at the same time, expect to get it. Expect to win. Have that expectancy that I'm doing all this work because in the end, it's not over until I win.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have that drive, man, when you have that mindset and that heart set, meaning the mindset that I can, I will, I must, and that conviction in your heart that I will, when those two things are in alignment, you are unstoppable. And that's when you can achieve the unthinkable.
Like so much going through my mind. Thank you. Thank you for the audience. Thank you for me personally. Got a million questions going through my mind, but I just want to pause and let that sink in. You know, I can, I will, I must.
Mm.
There was many years ago, I did a little research on powerless words. And being in construction, I hear them a lot. I should be there Friday. I hope to be done next week.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of different words from contractors, including myself, because then I started noticing how often I use them. But there's a lot of power when I say, I will be done Friday. I will meet you at noon on Tuesday, and a lot of that. So through these months and months ongoing of physical therapy, how often did you say it out loud to yourself? Did you ever look in the mirror and say the things you just shared with us? And how hard was that when maybe even your mind, you're not feeling it, but you're saying it? Did you do it out loud? Did you write it down at all? Um,
I did keep a journal,
mm-hmm,
probably for the first 3 months or so
mm-hmm,
post surgery. And reading through that, you'll see that there are times where I'm writing down like this isn't fair.
yeah, yeah,
What if I didn't opt for the
mm-hmm,
surgery? What could be happening now? Would I be paralyzed right now? Would they been able to fix me
mm-hmm,
without the surgery? So there were definite times of doubt where I was writing those things out, but I think my um I guess my ego
mm-hmm,
and the importance that my father instilled in me, for good or bad, of what perception other people have of you,
mm-hmm,
I wouldn't allow other people, most people anyway, to see me feeling defeated.
mm-hmm,
I wouldn't allow that perception to be out there because it wasn't one, again, it wasn't one that fit my identity.
mm-hmm,
And I had not been that kind of person um, who has that negative energy, that negative attitude. And this wasn't going to be any different. Now, again, as I mentioned before, you cannot be 100% positive and happy all the time. There are going to be those scenarios and situations in life where you're going to have that negative energy seep in and crack the armor, as it were. And that happened from time to time. But again, how do you get yourself out of that situation? How do you get yourself out of that funk?
mm-hmm,
There's a lot of different ways. For luckily for me, I had a great support group of people around me, friends and family,
mm-hmm,
coworkers,
yeah,
who believed in me and who, when I was able to make some progress and go from a walker to two canes, and they were cheering for me. I mean,
mm-hmm,
that was huge.
yeah,
So having a group of people around you that are supporting you
mm-hmm,
is super important.
yeah,
And also having positive inputs.
mm-hmm,
What are you listening to? What are you watching? Now, this is before streaming television. So, like, I'm not, binge watching Netflix or Hulu. They didn't exist like they
mm-hmm,
do now, anyway. Right. So, there was music, it was books. Um, Later on, it was YouTube videos,
mm-hmm,
listening to Les Brown. He was one of my mentors from afar, and really digging into a quote that one of my best friends gave me when I was in the hospital, and it's by Gandhi. And the quote is that strength does not come from physical capacity, it comes from an indomitable will. And that has been a motto of mine that I've adopted ever since. Like it's all up here.
mm-hmm,
Like if I believe it,
yeah,
I will achieve it, right? And if it is meant to be,
yeah,
it's up to me. Nobody is coming to save you,
right,
right? And if you are not going to work your tail off to save yourself, why should they?
mm-hmm. Like what you said there about the mind. I sit in a fair amount of rooms, with everything from preaching to motivational speaking to small groups. And I've heard that often, the biggest battle we face is between our two ears in our mind. And it can be so loud, the negative soundtracks. And actually, one of the books that helped change my life was just called that, just soundtracks. And I'll never forget how many soundtracks I started picking up on that I would even say, this is what others think, or this is what somebody said. And the more I stopped and thought, it's like, actually, nobody said that. Where did I get that? Like, that just is in my mind, this ugly, you're not good enough, you're a failure, you messed up again, you can't do it. So this is so encouraging. Uh, all the podcasts I'm uh, honored to be a part of are different, but this one really settles in at an important time in my life. I hope the audience shares this with others. You never know what people are going through, whether it's physical pain, spiritual pain, financial pain, emotional pain, but make sure you're around the right voices that are supporting and encouraging. And then, like your physical therapist, she's
Mhm.
saying, you better not come back in here in that wheelchair. We
That's
need
right.
those people that are going to be stern with love, but they're not going to be like, oh, it's okay. You need to accept that you're going to be in a wheelchair the rest of your life. That's not going to do anything.
Right.
So be careful what we're saying to people. Be careful what people we're listening to. And thank God for podcasts. I mean, somebody's going to hear this podcast, and it truly can and will impact lives. And so,
Yeah.
with technology being able to get this out there, if people listening to this right now have questions, I know you do speaking, you do coaching. What's
Mhm.
the best way they could find you to learn more?
So they can reach me at Ian at thepositivepersistence.com. If you want to shoot an email out there, I'm always open to answer questions. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram at Ian R. Bowen. And then there's thepositivepersistence.com or the Positive Persistence website. You
Mm-hmm.
can look at that as well. And then, of course, there's the podcast, the Positive Persistence podcast with Ian Bowen, where you can find anywhere and everywhere you can find your podcast. So all over the place.
I love that. When is your next upcoming run? Because I know you got something on the calendar.
Yeah, so actually I have a gig coming up September 9th where I'm going to be speaking to high school and middle school kids
Okay.
in Indiana, here in Sheridan, Indiana, which I'm looking forward to because that is going to be exciting. I always love speaking to kids because like that
Mm-hmm.
in such an impressionable time in their life, and you could
Right.
really make an impact at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really looking forward to doing that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but I also want to just leave your listeners with the understanding and the belief that you are more powerful than you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
There are things that you can do, that you can achieve, that you think are impossible, unthinkable, and others may tell you the same. But if you want it bad enough
Mm-hmm.
and you work hard enough and you believe, truly believe in yourself, you can achieve anything. And I am testament to this. I am not speaking off of theory. I am not speaking off of what I read. I'm speaking off of experience of coming from a place where medical experts told me that I was not supposed to be doing the things that I am doing now. They also told me that 2 years post surgery, however far I've come in my recovery, that was as far as I was going to get. And 2 years after my surgery, through the work that I did, I was able to walk unassisted, but I wasn't running yet. 13 years later
Mm.
is when I ran my first of two marathons. 13 years.
Wow.
So, and the point and I'm making there as well is what you're working towards, again, it's not going to be handed to you, and your success is not going to come overnight. You are going to have to be in the trenches for a long time. Just understand that. Go in with that. And when you do that, when you go in with that mindset, when you go in with that mental fortitude, understanding that this journey is going to be difficult, that it's going to have its ups, it's going to have its downs, it's going to have its hurdles that I'm going to need to deal with. When you understand that from the get go,
Mm-hmm.
it's much easier now to have the confidence and the understanding and the willingness to continue to push yourself when time gets hard. But just know that it's possible and that you can achieve greatness and you are stronger than you think.
Amen. Don't give up, even if it takes 13 years. That's a lot of
That's right.
persistence. It's one thing to have it for a couple days, a couple weeks, but 13 years is a long time. 4 months or 4 weeks in a hospital bed is a long time. So,
Well, I will leave you with, and your listeners, with another thing. that helped me is that I didn't give myself any other option. Like, it was either I make it or I make it. And that's it. And you've heard that said many times, burn the boats and to take the island and all those things, but it's true. When you are laser focused on this one outcome and nothing is going to stand in your way until you achieve it, you will move mountains.
Amen. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for being on Joy Hour today. I know you've got some young children that you're going to be having some time with this afternoon.
Yeah,
I'm sure
it's
that's
about
where
that time. Kids getting off the bus, getting off to school.
a lot of your joy comes from that, right? And teaching them and speaking into their lives. You've spoken to my life today, and I'm sure the audience is going to love it and be encouraged and inspired. And we love you all. Thanks for listening. Please share this with your friends. And thank you, Ian Bowen, for being on today.